Yeah, and it's not Danny either. He's us. Remember.
Hello, 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 and welcome to HMO Heroes Live at 5. Give us a thumbs up if you can see us online so that we know that we are in the right place and you can see us. We have got a brilliant show for you tonight. We've got a special guest, and he's a guest who's built up his rent-to-rent business along co-living principles in just 18 months. So for any of you out there who either own HMOs and are thinking of going into rent-to-rent, or you're just starting out in property and looking at the potential for rent-to-rent for you, and you're thinking, is it a good deal? Is it going to work out for you? How do you do it? This is a great show because it's going to show you how it can really transform your life in a relatively short period of time. Now, our guest today, as I say, has built up his co-living business with a fantastic brand within just 18 months. And what I love about him is his focus and his energy, but also the way that he's really, that his whole business is focused on customer satisfaction, not just for the landlords, but for our main customers, our tenants, who he's going to tell you a bit more about that and how that works within his business. He is a great guy, really likable and good fun as well, very down to earth. And I know that he's going to share with you the nuts and bolts of how it really worked from starting out and not knowing much about it to start off with, to creating a brand and a systemized business. So if you have questions because you are starting out, remember that this is a two-way thing we've got going on tonight. And if you are watching on the recorded version, please still comment your questions in the comments, and Dan can answer them, even if it's after the live. But certainly if you're on live with us, we would love to hear from you. Oh, we've already had some comments, I think. Oh, maybe these are the older comments. Yeah, they are. If you're just starting out. So if you're, oh, we've got a thumbs up, I think. Right. So without further ado, having given the build up, let me welcome to the show HMO hero, Dan Jackson. Welcome to the show, Dan. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Brilliant. Well, let's kick it off by asking you a bit about your background, Dan.
Okay, so we're not going to go back too far. We're probably going to go back to my background is in technology. I worked for 20 years in banks from about 1996 when I started. I always had an interest in technology. Built websites way back in the day before FreeServe was actually a thing. So my career in banking kind of progressed through the sort of software development kind of piece into business analysis, and then project management. But I've always been quite entrepreneurial, and you know, under the hood, I was always thinking about things I could try and do to build a business. I have a family, and it became very easy to just contract in banks essentially. So it wasn't until 2 or 3 years ago when I started to look at things that I could do outside of banking, basically. I looked at a couple of things, but property was something that appealed to me for a number of reasons. I've got 2 kids, and London, where I live in southwest London, is expensive, and my realization is that they will probably end up renting. So I was kind of thinking about that as what could we do to kind of make that better for them, and that kind of shaped the idea of going into property. My first sort of foray into the research area, I quickly realised that I couldn't afford to do what I thought I wanted to do in southwest London. You know, a flat is £600,000 here, so I spent 6 months looking at different markets in the UK. We went to Yorkshire, went to Bridlington in Yorkshire, which is about 7 hours away from here, to look at a development opportunity. We spent many trips to Manchester, which is kind of a hotbed of HMO, in terms of the the areas. We went to Kettering, which is a bit close to London, Birmingham, all sorts of different places, and the driver for doing that was really the price of entry for anything in London was just prohibitive, and then I became aware of rent to rent. It felt like a dirty word when I first heard of rent to rent. I thought, oh no, that sounds like because it is actually rent to rent is a poor description of what the business of doing that as an acquisition strategy could be. But I started to explore it, and the key moment for me was I came across an advert on Spare Room for a property for rent in Clapham.
Right.
And the advert was insanely beautiful. I mean, the rooms looked incredible. They had a video. The website was amazing. They were charging 20% more than the average market rate. So I phoned the guy up, and I wanted to find out how he did it. And at this point, I didn't phone him up in order to try and copy what he was doing, but I phoned him up to find out how he did it, and it became evident that he wasn't just buying; he did that as well. They're a funded startup. He was also finding landlords that wanted more commercial arrangements with people like me, and doing rent to rent deals with them. So at that point, I thought, okay, this is exactly what I need to do. And that was in November of 2016 when we first decided that we could build a business in London using rent to rent as our acquisition strategy.
Yeah, I really love that story. How you found it, fell into it. You've done a lot of due diligence. So that might be the situation that quite a lot of people are in now. They're thinking, possibly I could do this in London or wherever. And the price of entry into the marketplace doesn't come into it as much because you don't have to acquire the properties. But what I find interesting is the way that you did quite a bit of research first about your area. So do you want to tell us a bit more about how you decided upon which area in London to go for?
Well, I mean, my background is I'm very analytical. So that I have suffered from analysis paralysis on many occasions. I'm a spreadsheet guy. I've spent 20 years working in spreadsheets. So my analysis around area was very detailed, to the point that I had so much data. I pretty much overdone the analysis. But ironically, the simple thing was that if I was going to build this, and I was going to build this with the resources I had, they needed to be close to me. I live in SW16, so I live between Tooting and Streatham, and all our rent to rents right now are a maximum of 25 minutes drive away. I love Southwest London. I've lived here since the mid 90s, and it's a fantastic area for sharing. The Northern Line into town is just a great area. So it was quite ironic that it took 6 months to get to the realization that actually I could build a business in my back garden. Because if you listen to all the gurus and all the people that talk about it, they will actually tell you that. But I needed to really get to that decision my own way, I think.
Okay, I'm going to say a few hellos, Dan. We have had a few people say hi. So hi to Amina. Hi, Raj and Sudeep. Hello, guys, and thanks for commenting as we go through. If you've got any questions for Dan, please do ask them. So, Dan, so you sort of did this massive analysis of the area. What are the key things that you think people should look for to work out if their area is going to work for rent to rent?
Well, that's a great question, and I think, to be honest, I'm in London, and some of the decision points that people might make if they're not in London might be slightly different, although the fundamentals remain the same. I mean, people who share need to be well connected. so therefore they need to be close to transportation links. In London, obviously everything is close to a transport link of some description, but the transport links are rated according to, you know, ease of use, etc. So buses would come after trains, would come after tubes. So we need to be near tube stations, and the Northern Line again is the line that I've chosen. I live near it, and most of the HMOs are near the Northern Line. Things that are kind of less obvious but important. Green space in London is at a premium. If you find somewhere near a park, people like that. And I think London is now becoming more competitive, I think, from an HMO rent to rent or, you know, or purchase perspective. So quality is super important. So I think the three things I always kind of look at, obviously you've got price, you've got quality, and you've got location. And those two things form an iron triangle. If you get that right, then you will rent those rooms out. If you get that wrong, the quality is below the price or the location doesn't match, then you won't get any inquiries over rooms.
Fantastic. That is really a great tips for people there. And now we will come back, because quality is more difficult or more challenging to achieve in the rent to rent, where you're on a more of a shoestring budget, where either you're investing in someone else's property or you're have negotiated the landlord to invest in their property, and that's often not going to be in terms of huge amounts that people might spend if they're renovating an HMO to rent out that they own. So we'll come back to how to achieve that quality on a budget. But for now, we've got another topic that I know that people are extremely interested in, and that's how to source your rents to rent deal. Right. Now, especially if you're just starting, this is the thing that people worry about most. And I know that you did have some challenges to overcome in this area. So let's go into that, Dan. Tell me about what your sourcing strategy was once you decided that rent to rent was definitely for you.
Okay, so this was back in January of last year, and myself and Robin, my partner, had spent a lot of time doing this research. We decided round about Christmas time, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do rent to rent in Southwest London. We're going to create a co-living company. I bought a book. I can't remember what it's called, but I bought a book that kind of gave me some high-level advice. And I then told Robin that what we were going to do is we were going to email all the agents. So we'd go into Rightmove, and we would type in the criteria of the properties that we were looking for. So bearing in mind my Excel analysis, I was pretty confident I knew exactly what we needed. So
what criteria were you looking for, Dan? What criteria did you put into Rightmoves?
So, and this is going back a little bit, but the criteria to start with was based on 3 postcodes and a mile, within a mile of 3 detailed postcodes, with natural 3-bed terrace properties that therefore we hoped had 2 reception rooms, one of which we could then convert into a bedroom. Having floor plans is super important when you're searching Rightmove, because almost pretty much you can discount anything that's got, you know, a nice big through lounge. If there's no way of creating that additional room, then the only way of making that property work from a rent to rent business is by getting a significant discount from the landlord. And in London, that doesn't work. Generally, it can work, but generally it doesn't work. So we were looking for 3-bed properties, 3-bed terraced houses in 3 postcodes that we then hoped had a floor plan. And I then drafted 2 or 3 standard responses that we could paste into Rightmove. And then we searched and we sent emails and we sent emails. I was sending, I've got the numbers somewhere, and we did discuss this earlier. I think in total over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, we sent over 100 emails. And I'm not particularly confident speaking on the phone to someone I've never known before. So I felt uncomfortable with the idea of them phoning them up.
Yeah.
My partner Robin, however, she just picks up the phone and talks to anyone. It's amazing. So she was like, okay, let's chase them all up. And I was, no, I think we should wait for them to respond back, express some interest. And we've created that warm lead, and then I will contact them. And she said, okay, well, we'll do both. So we then spent, I think the whole sourcing process for the first 2 deals was less than 2 weeks.
Really?
When we started, it was less than 2 weeks.
And just to point out that when you started, it was only January 2016.
No, January 2000. What are we? 2018. January last year. Yeah.
January last year. So guys, they only started January last year. I think that should really encourage people who are sort of on the edge about whether to go in. So you started calling them, Dan.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing that I thought was really important was having. First of all, we needed to be really clear about what we were offering, what we were offering the agent, and therefore what we were offering the landlord. We created I put a website up quite quickly. It was a very basic one. Before we came up with the name for the company, I was called DMH Property, which is very corny, and it's Dan, Molly, Harry. But it doesn't sound cool. It doesn't sound like the sort of company you'd want to rent a room from. But we put that up there. We created a brochure, and I think for me those two things were really important, because straight away I think we had some credibility with the agents. Yeah. And I would recommend highly that, to start, and literally we used WordPress back then, but I would recommend Weebly now. Very cheap, and it's drag and drop, and it's a great way to create a website that gives you that establishes some presence. I mean, I'm proud of our website. I did that myself. Wow. And I think it's important that you have those two items. A brochure was super important because it was also a bit of an icebreaker when we were speaking to agents.
You printed that off?
No, so we created a PDF and just emailed it.
Yeah. I really, really like that. And I really love Dan's website as well. And the whole brand of the company, it's called Urban Shared. And if you get a chance, have a look. Is it .co.uk? .com. So it's urbanshared.com. Obviously not now in the middle of the live, but have a look at the website. It's a really, really nice website. And Dan, we have had a couple of messages. Oh gosh. Oh dear. Right. Okay. So Sudeep says, it would be great, Dan, if you let us know the book name. So maybe afterwards you can have a look. Yep. And we'll just post that in the comments for you, Sudeep, because Dan can't remember just now, but we will post that in the comments. We've got quite a few people watching now. Will, Tara, Arshad, Clive, Vito. Hi guys. Thanks for watching. And obviously any comments or questions. And we've got Janet as well, and Anil. So let's dig in now with the sourcing, because you've sort of been calling. Did you find the calls work better than the emails, or what do you think? If you were going to do it, well, you're still doing it. What do you do now? What's your process?
Let's go back to the first two deals. Now, the first two deals happened almost identically on the same day. So the process was email or phone call, some response from the agent, arrange a viewing. And I think the other tip that I would definitely eulogize about was we never tried the whole subterfuge approach. I said we're a professional company. We rent properties as a business, and we then rent to our clients. We didn't try and get viewings and then say, oh, by the way, this is a corporate let. I thought, no, let's just be honest straight away. Let's right up off the bat. Let's tell everybody what we do. And we'd told this one company that this is what we did, and they were a little bit unsure as to whether they would like to go with this. These are small agents. I think that people do say that small agents work, and I can confirm that small agents work to start with much better than the branded agents that have got corporate departments that require 2 years of accounts. So definitely look for the smaller agents. But this agent was unsure, and I think actually she possibly didn't know what we were doing, and she was delivering a canned response around not dealing with corporate. So we sent her the brochure, and about 5 minutes after we sent her the brochure, she phoned back up and said, actually, we've just got a house who the landlord of whom wants to use the company.
Right.
And yeah, and we went to see it that day, and it was a property that we still own, that we still manage or rent today. And the landlord wanted a company because he'd had one before.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting kind of brief half an hour's worth of conversations, because it went from pretty cold to, okay, now we would be interested in entertaining this, obviously, because they had a client that was comfortable. And that whole process was as a result of a call that Robin made. And that happened literally. I think the thing about Rent to Rent that still surprises me now is I could sit here now with absolutely nothing in my pipeline, and at 6 o'clock have 2 seriously interested deals. It really happens like that. You know, you can have.
I'm sort of guessing that there's a sucker 1-2 punch, which is the call followed up by the brochure, which is a PDF. Is that on your website, Dan? The PDF?
No, I'm just in the process of rebranding it, so it's currently on my hard disk. It used to be on the website.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. So just to go back, hi Akil, we've got with us now, and Hannah, and Arshad Ali has asked, can we ping in the website address? So Nicky, could you please put in the comments urbanshared.com so that people can see the address? And Amina Cad has asked, Dan, are your houses in the Article 4 areas, or do you just avoid it?
So not actively avoid, but none of them are in Article 4 areas. Although we've got three in Fulham that has introduced additional licensing. We could have a conversation about licensing at a, you know, if people are interested. I wouldn't avoid an Article 4 area if there was demand for the product. I would make sure that there was demand and that I knew how to be compliant. In fact, I think I wouldn't be alone in probably assuming that it could be advantageous, because to operate in an Article 4 area, you probably need to be more diligent, more focused, and it may well remove some of the element that people who don't like rent to rent talk about, those that don't care.
Yeah. That's a good point. So what you said, you've not got experience at the moment with your properties, and none of them are in Article 4, but you do have experience with additional licensing. So did the additional licensing come in after you already had those properties? And what did you have to do to meet it, and how was that paid for between yourself and the owner?
So the additional licensing came in October of last year, and it's in Hammersmith and Fulham Council. They've also introduced selective licensing. So the additional licensing, essentially, if you look at their website, they have additional licensing at different numbers of tenants. So there's no 2 or 3 story criteria. It's simply number of tenants. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but we have an HMO with 3 people that needs a license. So I think it's more than 2 unrelated, you need an additional license. And the process is, I'm kind of with the licensing thing. Whilst I can be underscribed to the need for regulation, it feels as though some councils, and I hope no one is watching who is from a council, it feels like some councils are just using it to create some cash flow. And I'll tell you why. With Hammersmith and Fulham, we went through the process. It was quite a long, drawn-out process. It was all online, but it was a big job. We submitted all our documentation, etc. We paid the fee, which we paid. And we haven't heard anything from them now, and that feels to me as though either they have a backlog, or it was simply a way of creating some revenue, because we haven't had an inspection or anything. I'm interested to see how October pans out. I think.
Yeah. The reason I thought those questions might be interesting is because lots of people will need to license their HMOs come October with the new regime that's coming in October. So it's good to see that that is something that can be managed. On this occasion, you paid it, but there might be other occasions where you negotiate that the property owner pays it.
Yeah.
Now, I can't believe we're nearly halfway through. We have had Akil. We're going to come. Akil's question is, Dan, whose name does the council tax go on? The company or the landlord? Your company or the landlord?
Our company, or my name.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So I think just to summarize then on the sourcing side of things, your tips for the new people going into rent to rent, give it to us.
I think be professional. Have that website and have that brochure. Have some scripts that you use when contacting agents, and think about the benefits to the agents. So sales, which I'm not a salesman, but it's all about the benefits rather than the features or the functions. So the benefit for a landlord, the benefit for an agent, the biggest benefit, as far as I can see, is I can move really, really quickly on a deal. If an agent really understood what we needed and they had one of those on their books, then we could have the deal done in a day. So that saves them on their marketing costs. It saves them on the time that they would spend. So the benefit to the agent is this: that it's a hassle-free sale for them. I think the other things that I would say is we documented everything that we did. I knew how many calls we'd made. I knew how many emails we sent. I knew what we sent them. I knew when we sent the information that we sent. So I could look back and find out what worked and what didn't work. So I think treat it like a business and treat it like an operation that has a start, a middle, and an end. And I think then sourcing becomes, I think sourcing then becomes a relatively straightforward task.
Yeah, and I think people will be surprised to hear you say that, because that's the bit that people tend to say that they struggle with the most. So that is encouraging. Now, we did have a question. I just need to check the name of the person. So we're going to answer that, which is, tell us all about your first deal, how you sourced it, the numbers, the challenges, and all the good stuff.
Okay. So we had two land at the same time, but the one that is probably more interesting was a 4-bed terraced house in Clapham that came through an agent. So I'd met with one of the negotiators on another property. It was clear that they were really interested in the business model, a small agency, and the owner of which has actually become quite a close friend, and is our main source of deals. One agent. The first deal was, as I said, it was a 4-bed in Clapham that was owned by the church, mortgage-free. Vicars had lived in it since the mid-20s or 30s. Really, it had always been owned by the church. We saw it on the Saturday along with 2 or 3 other operators in the area, and these were names that I'd heard of. 2 or 3 bigger rent-to-rent businesses, one of which has got over 50 properties in southwest London. So I knew that if they were interested, I knew that the numbers would work. It was just a question of getting the deal. I put in an offer straight away. They told me that probably I need to up the price, so I upped the price straight away. It was only 50 quid, and it was still below the market value. And they then, I think it probably took a week of toing and froing before they said that the church wanted to go with us. So the numbers on that, bearing in mind this is London, we paid £3,450 a month to rent this property, which is a lot of money, but we rent out the rooms for somewhere around about 4.7, 4.8, depending on 50 quid here, 50 quid there, depending on, what's going on. It's quite cheap to run. I think we budget about £80. No, I know that we budget about £80 per tenant. There are 6 tenants that live there, and they spend, it costs about 70 each. So that's 70 times 6 is 350 to £400. So those are the numbers on it.
That sounds like a good one, Dad. Just doing a bit of quick mental arithmetic.
It is a good one. It's a lovely property. Go on, Steph.
We've got a question that does pertain to this. So let me just jump in and ask it. So Josh Senior has said, when dealing with the agent, do you always pay the asking rent for the property? I feel that if you're not dealing direct with the landlord, this must be a little harder. So in the example you gave us, what was the rent? What was the property on for rent at, and what did you secure it for?
That's a good question. The property was on at 3,500, and I had spent. We put in quite a lot of offers up until this point, and I'd read somewhere that we should be looking at justifying 85% of the market rent as our offers, and we could justify that by all the things that landlords don't consider when renting: voids, maintenance, all those sorts of things. And 85% is justifiable. The downside is that no one will accept a deal at 85%. In London, the market, whilst it's sort of, it's no longer boiling and flying in that direction, it's still buoyant, and families will still pay around about asking price. So I was confronted with the reality that all my 85% offers weren't being accepted or weren't even being entertained. So I then had to adjust my expectations. And I think in January of last year, if you were listening to some people that were training rent to rent as a business, they were saying you could make that £1,000, £1,200, £1,300. You might in some markets. In Southwest London, you can't. So I quickly realised that if I needed to do some business, I needed to alter my expectation.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. So tell us, so you've got this deal. You must have been mega excited, maybe slightly concerned.
I think concern would be a good
yeah. So tell us about it. So you've got it. You've agreed the rent, and how did it progress from there, as far as refurb and so on, tenanting?
It's such a, looking back, I mean, it was myself and Robin that we did the refurb. I can remember walking into this place thinking, this is incredible. This is our first one. It took, we didn't actually do that much. We varnished the floors downstairs, a really dark varnish. They look amazing. Did some painting. We had a new boiler installed. That was at the cost of the landlord. And we installed an interlinked mains powered fire alarm system and fire doors and the 30-minute plasterboard in the cellar. It took 6 weeks to do that. And during that time, no one was living in it, and it was costing £3,500 a month.
Painful. Ooh.
So, and that was all we do. I none of it really sort of clicked that this didn't make a lot of sense. Bearing in mind we got 2 at the same time. The other one was less, but it was still, it was still a couple of grand. So I was sitting there with 2 properties that we were doing up. One we outsourced to a local builder, and that we put a toilet in. We painted from top to bottom. We took fireplaces out. These were rent to rent deals. And we did lots of things that I would never do again, ever do again. But at the time, we did them because we didn't know. I think actually we did know that you shouldn't pay. You should try and negotiate deposit free. You should try and negotiate rent free period. But quite honestly, we didn't have the experience or the sort of credibility for me to even entertain those conversations. Different now, but back then I thought, no, let's just get them. And I remember talking to a friend of mine. He said, no, you've got to pay to learn. And we paid to learn, and we learned lots.
Yeah. So now people watching today don't necessarily have to pay to learn because your experience is teaching them. So I think that some really, really good tips in there. So earlier on you said about having the website, and when we're talking about the brochure, it's actually something that's on email, electronic, and it's just been saved as a PDF and emailed to people. So have your offering in writing is really what Dan means by that. And then the second thing is obviously have the rent-free period. Be careful about what sort of refurbishment that you do to look at the costs and so on. And I'm guessing you've got a spreadsheet to do your analysis of your deals and so on, Dan, as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And did you have that at the beginning before these two deals?
I did. Yeah, I did. I mean, I was, like I say, I spent 20 years basically developing in Excel all sorts of different pricing models, etc. But it's really quite simple to put together a deal analysis spreadsheet. If you know how to take one cell away from another, you can create something that you can then use consistently.
Yeah. So great points. And you've had a round of applause, Dan, from Joseph Hammer. Hey, Joseph. Oh, I can see Gordon's watching, and somebody else likes the Arshad Ali saying he likes the pay to learn. Now, oh gosh, we've got the comments are coming in thick and fast, and then we're going to move on. So, what is it? Josh Senior is asking, what is the average spent for both of you on the refurbs? I've seen some competition in my area, and it looks like people are spending thousands and thousands doing them up. Is this usually the case? Okay, so what do you want to answer that, Dan?
Yeah, okay. I mean, again, that is another good question. That was I guess back in the day, back in January of last year, my understanding was that you would need to spend on refurbs. My understanding now is I look to return the investment that we put into the property within 6 to 12 months. Back then, it was absolutely impossible for me to imagine that as being achievable. But with that in mind, it's quite difficult when you're starting out. I'm not going to lie; it's quite difficult to know how much to spend, what kind of property you might want to spend that on, and bearing in mind it's not your property. There's often a reticence to do that. I don't think I really have an answer, except it's really important to get that first deal. And as long as you get a property that you're comfortable you can rent out, that you understand the competition, so spare room, you can use spare room to ascertain supply and demand in various locations. In London, we always look for at least 4 times the number of people looking as there are rooms. In markets, that's different. But you, as long as your numbers stack, you might be comfortable, for example, with turning your initial investment in 2 years. If you've got a 3-year deal, you might think that works for you. For me, back in the day, I would have probably gone with a deal that did that. Now, on our latest deal, we will start the period. Our return on investment is immediate. And this is an insane property that is, it's I will never live in a property like this. So I guess you just kind of like evolve what makes sense from an analysis perspective.
You do evolve your model. Now, you asked for both of us, so I'm going to answer that question as well, because a lot of you will know that we have spent a lot on refurbs in the past. How we do that, and there is risk in this model, so it's not for everyone. So how we structure our deals is typically it's 5 years, and we saw a lot of opportunity when we first came here to take on properties that nobody else would take on, although you don't have to do this and you don't need to spend a lot of money. Now, one property we spent £12,000 on over 5 years. The return on the investment, taking into account voids, taking into account the 12 grand that we've spent and all the costs for the property, we make 60 grand. So we felt that was worthwhile. That's our net profit on that one. However, we wouldn't spend that much now. There are certain things, we were new to the area at that stage and so on. So lots of contractor things cost us more than they cost us now. And again, we're better at negotiating with the property owners about things that they want to pay for. So the great thing about rent to rent is you can flex it to however you want to do it, to have the owner pay, to have yourself pay, to have yourself sort of claim all the money back straight out of the rent once you complete the deal, so that you don't have the risk of claiming it back over a 5-year period. So lots of different ways to do it, and we could probably have a whole hour just talking about the refurbs. I just want to chip in with something that would help. So if you are just starting out, you're doing your first deals, one of the most important things you do is to talk to somebody experienced who's already doing it, who has your vested interest at heart. So a family or friend who's close to you, who's doing it, who's going to share this information with you, who you can bounce the ideas off so that you can learn without paying, or you can pay for that with training or mentorship or coaching. We have had another question for you, Dan. Sudeep wants to know, hi Dan, working with agents, email or call or visiting the agent's office, which do you think is the most effective?
I would always start with an email, but that's, I guess, because I'm perhaps slightly introverted. I would never go into an agent unannounced or phone up on cold call. It's just not something that I would do. My partner would do both of the two things that I wouldn't do. So it's whatever you're comfortable with. I think I'm much more structured. I think an email and then wait for a response. If we've got no responses from our emails, I would have then called. At least I had something then to refer to. Did you receive my email?
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is make sure that whichever method you use, one, you need to be prepared, and two, you need to make sure you're talking to an influencer or the decision maker.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've got so much to because we've only got 15 minutes left, Dan, and I want to get some of the meatiness, because what you do is slightly different to what a lot of other people do. It is, you do stand by the co-living concept and all about the service excellence for your customers, who you call members. So do you just want to tell us a bit about that and the app and that sort of thing, please? Yeah.
We're trying to build a business that is looking to change the way people perceive renting in London. The trend towards generation rent is such that by the middle of the next decade, that it's forecast that 75% of people in London will be renting, 22 to 35-year-olds, of which over 80% will be sharing. So the market is growing for what we do. And the idea of simply creating a series of one-off properties that people rent, for me, isn't that interesting. I like the idea of creating amazing places that people actually want to live. I accept that we've been brought up, certainly people in my generation have been brought up to think that owning is the way forward. I think that that's changing. And therefore, I think we've got an opportunity to make renting or sharing a really, really cool thing. So co-living is essentially, it's just a posh word for shared houses, but it talks about community. We talk about community. We talk about people sharing experiences. Some of this sounds a bit American and a bit kind of cheesy. I'll acknowledge that. But I lived in a shared house when I was, in my mid to late 20s, and it could have been a much better experience. Things like splitting bills. I know that we all include bills into our model, but we're trying to introduce other things that develop community into our model. So we do, for example, we do social events. We're looking at providing discounts to local for tenants in local shops. And I mean, to be quite honest with you, I'm not an expert in community. So one of the things that we will look to do when we grow is to find somebody that knows how to help us with this. Online communities now may even be a way of creating that real co-living feeling. So I think there is a huge trend towards, although there will be a huge trend towards this market, it will become more competitive. I think we need to develop our product in a more strategic way. So I love that now people are really creating beautiful, HMOs. You go on Facebook, and some of the rooms you see are amazing. Yeah. We want to take that one step further. And we want to say, well, how, not just the room, but what about the people? How can we make sure that someone who moves into this room wants to stay here? This person could be a customer for 10 years.
Yeah.
And think about lifetime value of that particular customer. So we're developing ideas, and we've created an app that we're going to be rolling out to our customers that combines a few of the things that other apps currently do, together with a few things that no one's doing, in an attempt to create some community. And we're thinking of lots of different ways of making. I like the idea of creating some software that puts tenants at the centre of the solution. At the moment, if you look at prop tech, bearing in mind I'm a technology guy, I'm interested in all that kind of stuff. But it's the prop tech solutions out there are all about investors. They're all about maintenance. And they're all about landlords. Yeah. There's nothing that actually says, well, how about we put the tenant first, because they pay our wages. Yeah. How about we put them first and create something that's fantastic for them? So that's kind of what we're doing.
That's great. Thank you for that. We have got another question. Tracy Fuller says, I'm really excited about this, Stephanie. I'd like to know what the best tactics are for finding potential deals and how to first broach the subject of R2R with the landlord. Now, we may have covered that a little bit. Well, we have. But do you always get introduced via the agent, or do you have some that will also direct the landlords, Dan?
Oh, we have a couple of direct-to-landlord deals through my network, predominantly. So when I started doing this, people say, tell people what you do. Absolutely tell people what you do. Don't sell anything, just tell them. And I've had quite a lot of people who I've known for years go, actually, I know someone that's got a house, or I've got a couple. Are you interested? So that really does work. Again, if they see that you're professional and you know what you're doing and you have some passion for it, then you'll probably find that people who you didn't know had property could help.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Josh Senior, he says, sorry, one more from me. When it comes to flexibility for the landlord in the contract, what do you allow? I.e., if they need to sell or change their mortgage. When I click see more, I get emoticons come up over the question. Sorry. When it comes to flexibility for the landlord in the contract, what do you allow? I.e., if they need to sell, if they need to change their mortgage product, need to pull out equity, etc.
That's a good question. We sign or have signed predominantly 3-year deals with landlords. And what's really important to me is that the ecosystem of my business, we all know each other, and that I know my landlords, I know my agents, and we talk to each other about things. And nothing's happened yet that has changed the terms of any of these deals. But I would hope that if a landlord had a requirement to sell the property because there was a life-changing event, that we could talk about it and work out a solution at the time. It's very, very hard to predict all the eventualities from a legal perspective, but actually most people are decent human beings, and I would expect to be able to have a conversation with every single one of my landlords about a change in circumstances that might require us to change a deal. Yeah. I think that would be my approach with everyone I was dealing with in the business.
Yeah. Honestly, Dan, this is blowing up tonight because we've got so many people asking comments and questions. I'm going to ask these questions, and then I want to have a little bit of time on voids, because that's one of the biggest challenges to a guaranteed rent model is voids. So we do want to spend a little bit of time on that. But let me give value and answer some of these questions that have been asked. I can't even keep up with them all. So Ernest Ibe has asked, Dan, could you share what type of return on investment should we look for when starting?
We were looking for essentially to return our upfront investment within 18 months to start with.
Yeah.
So what would that be? 66% or something along those lines.
Yeah.
We now look to return within 6 to 12 months. So 9 months is a good deal.
Or the other way, Ernest, of course, is not to make any investment. So there are ways where, say, you say, for example, you need to do a 6K refurb, or the property requires a 6K refurb to bring it up to the standard that you feel that needs to be let out at, and you're on a 5-year deal. You could then reduce the rent to the landlord by £100 a month. That gives you an extra 6K over the term of the contract. Or you could reduce the rent to the landlord by 150K a month. That reduces what you pay to the landlord over the term by £9,000, which is more than what you've actually paid out. So that means, in a way, you don't have to invest. Or the other way, where it seems like you don't have to invest, is if you agree with the landlord that you'll pay for the investment, but you'll keep 100% of the rent until your investment is repaid. Okay. So there are different ways. There are different ways to do it. So you're keeping the rent that you would have paid to the landlord until the investment's repaid, but you're also got your profit. So you're still making your profit over that period when you're recouping 100% of the rent. So there's different ways to do it, Ernest. And again, speak to people who've done it. When you've got the deal in front of you, bounce around ideas, because there's so many ways that you can. Shouldn't really say skin the cat, but there's so many ways you can run this business. Now, back to the questions. Dan, Nicky Taylor, hello Nicky. Hi Dan, love what you do and the standards you're operating at. Thanks for that. Raj Sharma, who we love as well. Hi Raj. Says, Dan, how do you manage your properties? Do you have your own team or do you outsource?
We have our own team at the moment. Our own team. It's not the most glamorous part of the business. It's me. It's my partner Robin. We have 2 handymen that we don't employ full time, but kind of work with us as a priority. And we have a cleaning company that I think they have about 6 or 7 cleaners that just do Southwest London, and that's the team at the moment.
Great, thanks. Nicky. No, Amina says, sorry, got to rush to nursery. Please share the link for the replay. Thanks very much to you, Dan. And hi, Amina, again. We haven't made you late for nursery. But the video will be in the HMO Heroes page on the left-hand side, excuse me. There's a menu, and one of the items in the menu is videos. If you just click on that, you can see all the videos for the group, and they're all in the group. So Nicky T wants to know, any systems nuggets, Dan? What tool system adds the most value to your business? What could you simply not operate without?
Excel.
Right. Okay. I kind of knew you were going to say that, but you're an Excel guru, so I'm sure it all looks very formed and not.
Yeah, it does. We know that we need to get some sort of a CRM is becoming important now. We tried Pipedrive for a while, which was good. I haven't actually found anything that I really love yet, except that my Excel for me kind of really works, and for most people it wouldn't to start with. Things like Arthur I've heard, and a few others, but I've never really used anything.
Yeah, I think the property management systems are fantastic when you do outsource, because you can have a virtual assistant working in your business and using that system really easy, and you can get into the system anytime and see what see. Anyone can go in anytime, so we find, yeah, absolutely, they're great. But going back to you, because this big challenge, let me see how much time we've got left. Only 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. A big challenge to the business that is putting a lot of people off from going into HMOs and rent-to-rents is voids, that the voids are coming up. So tell us about your top tips for keeping your properties full.
So my top tip is to be completely all over it. Robin is on spare room all the time when there is when we know that someone's handed a notice in, and we are very, very reactive. it's not. I don't think this is the best solution right now. But we are super reactive. We do viewings whenever we can. We do try and block them out. But if somebody can't do it at their time, we will. Sorry, at our time, we'll be flexible. We try and get tenants to do viewings for us. We find that we're better than they are, but that's a downside. We do viewings if that's what's required. So I think you just need to really focus and be essentially all over it. And so far we've had, I think over the course of 18 months, we've had 10 days of void, and that is literally happening. I think from now until the 21st of July is our first void. I think as you get bigger, then you need to think about some other tactics and techniques. But I think being focused on essentially making a decision not to have any, and then focusing on what you can do to make sure they don't happen is the important thing.
Yeah. Great tips there, thanks. And guys, we had a post within the group about voids. What's your one thing that you're doing to stop the void? So do have a look at that and do put on what's working for you. I put in the top tip that's working for us. There's 3 things that are working for us, but the top one is a way of giving the notice period, making the notice period differently. And then the second one is like Dan's slightly, it's service, being about excellence in service and excellence in marketing. Now, we really are close to the line. We've only got 3 minutes to go. And Josh Senior is just saying that he looked at using Podio from the start, which seemed to be a really good CRM tool, and it's free. And also we know, because we know, Francis, as well, that there's the Podio, which is free, but also there's a Podio which is all set up for property with everything you need to run your property business, and that's called the Engine Room. And I've heard that is also very good as well. How do you manage going away for a week or 2? Vince Walker is asking.
Going away? Where?
Hey. Going away.
Well, I think that the benefit of the use of the technology enables you to manage the business from wherever. I mean, okay, so we've not been away for 2 weeks since we started the business, but we went away for a week in last year, and we have a support phone, so we use our own phones. Support phone is on from 9 to 5, and we have our maintenance people that can do any sort of emergency fixes in that period of time. Obviously, I wouldn't go away if there was a surge of of people looking to hand their notice in, or I did the last deal. This sounds kind of cool, but it just kind of happened. I did our last deal on the ski slopes in Italy, and all I had was my laptop, and it didn't even have 4G. But I think I got quite lucky. But it's possible to run a property business relatively remotely, but not for a sustained period of time.
Yeah, and what I keep forgetting anyway when I visit the website, see the rooms and the quality that Dan is offering, is that Dan started his business 18 months ago. So of course, as time goes on, he will bring new people into the business, and obviously that gives you a little bit more freedom. But just want to say thank you so much, Dan Jackson, for coming on the show and delivering such value to us all. It's been great having you with us. Thank you so much to everyone who's watched live with us tonight, and also all the comments and the love we've had. That's been great. I've really enjoyed that back and forth. We have got Wendy Whitaker-Larger on the show next week, who's been in this business for 5 years and has achieved a phenomenal amount too. And so we'll be back here live at 5 for that. So hopefully to see you then. If you're not watching live and you've got questions that you want to ask Dan, just put them in the comments and Dan will answer them when he can. And so all that remains to say is, Dan, do you want to add anything else before we go that you feel I haven't asked you?
No, I don't think so. I think that I would reiterate how important it is to feel very passionate about the whether it's co-living, whether it's HMOs, or whether it's shared houses, I think it's important to feel as though you can make a difference. I think it's not just about replacing an income. I think you need to feel passionate about it and want to make a change and keep going. It's not as easy as some people say, but it's also not impossible. You can create a sustainable business from rent to rent, and more importantly, it could lead to developments, or it could lead to buy-to-lets or different things. It's a really great way of starting, and it's very, very possible to take that and create something that you can be proud of and that can actually give you purpose.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Dan. And if you are thinking of starting up a rent-to-rent business and you're just at that beginner stage, look out for this, because we will be launching a Get Your First Deal, and that's just coaching and working with us in small groups to actually take the actions that you need to take to get to your first deal. So that will be launching soon. So keep your eyes in the group, and we will be announcing more details about that. So it's bye from me and bye from Dan.
Bye.
We will see you all. We'll see you next week. Any more questions, answer them, and we will ask them below, and we will answer them offline. Bye for now.